name is Helen Cook. I'm Head of Learning at the River and Row Museum, which means I'm responsible for all learning activity. So we run a schools programme for all ages from early years to A-level students and university students, and then we have a public events programme as well that I help coordinate for families and for young under fives and then adults as well. So I'm responsible for all of that. So I used to be a secondary school teacher. I taught history, and I used to take the children out on trips, and we used to have sessions with people who worked in the museums or wherever, and I thought, wow, that would be a really good job because you get to explore your subject and work with young people but not have to mark homework. So I decided to take a year out of university and did a 1-year master's in museum studies, quite a general course. With the view that I would specialise in museum education. So after the end of the year I applied for jobs and I actually got one, so then kind of kept going really. So I don't really have a typical day at all, and that's one of the fun things about working in museums. So today, for example, I helped set up for a school group. We had meetings today, then we were hunting for the doorbell chimer, and then I was taking groups up to the galleries, and then I'm meeting with you, and we've got a work experience student this week, so I'm supervising him, and then we've been planning for a family event in 2 weeks' time. So there's a whole mix of things that we do. A lot of it is working with the public. And then we also, there's a lot of kind of back of house planning that has to be done, and then we're often working with different young people in different ways. It's very, very varied. And then it's because I'm head of department, I also have the kind of strategic planning to do and the budget management and things like that. So I think sort of from a basic entry point of view, it's a competitive area to get into. It's difficult to find that first job, I think, particularly now because there are more and more courses that train people to work in museums and there are fewer jobs really. But in the job itself, I think it's always a challenge to find ways to excite and engage audiences, so to bring what we have in our collections to life for them. So we might think things are really exciting, but someone walking through the door might need a bit more encouragement and help to access it. So that is a bit of a challenge.
Do you think school children are kind of a difficult audience?
No, I wasn't thinking of the schools particularly actually. I was thinking more of the wider audience, because I think in our museum we have the challenge of our name, which is river and rowing. So they're not two topics that people automatically think, yeah, got to go there. And we have a challenge because we have far more going on than that name suggests. And so there's a perception of us as a museum. And actually there's a perception of museums in general among certain communities, and like teenagers, for example. We have a youth squad, we were talking to them last night about what we could do to encourage their age group in. And even they have been involved with the museum for a couple of years now. We're kind of saying, oh no, young people don't like museums. And it's like, well, you do, so you're not weird, so there must be ways in for everybody, So it can be challenging to engage people with your collections and what you have, and I think also just working with the range of audiences that we have and the limits you inevitably have on time and resources and staffing. You can't always do everything you want to do, but it's kind of challenge just in terms of that organisational side as well. I love the variety and the unpredictability, and you just don't know quite what's going to happen, which is great.
Expect the unexpected.
Expect the unexpected. And it's fantastic working with collections, working with objects that have stories behind them that are amazing. And I have a great team that I work with, and it's wonderful just welcoming all these different people to the museum. With schools, you take them up into the galleries and they walk through the door into the Helen Gallery and they go, wow, and that's just fantastic. And you see them having a really good day, and if you're teaching them and they've learned something new, or something's really sparked their interest, or in a family event when at the end of the day we've all been working really hard and it's very full on, and then you see a little child walking out and they've got everything that we've been making, all the craft activities, and they're wearing their carrot hat or whatever it is, and you can just see that they've had a really lovely time. Museum education tries to be very hands-on, very practical and very experiential. So you're actually it's not about necessarily learning a set amount of information, although what we do is very closely tied in with the national curriculum. But it's about giving them an experience that they can't have in the classroom. So for us here, having the river, that's like an extra classroom for us. So we do a lot of outdoor learning, and we take them outside as much as possible and use the environment. It's also about the power of the real and the authentic. So museums have objects, collections, sounds, images that are genuinely of a time and a place and a person, and that's you can't replicate that. So I went into a school in Slough a couple of weeks ago, and I took Anna Watkins' 2012 Olympic kit that she won her gold medal in. So I talked to them about her, and we had pictures of her, and then I said, this is what she was wearing when she was rowing and won that medal. And they were like, oh, the actual thing, so that actual real thing. And museums do have to use replica objects as well, so they still have stories, and you can still unpack a time and a period of time, but having the real thing, that's what museums have. And I think that is something different to what other arts organisations or creative organisations can offer.
And so do you think schools maybe are a bit too hemmed in by sort of mark schemes and qualifications? And
I think they can be, because there's so much pressure on schools in terms of SATs and exams and league tables and all of that. But then we work with a huge number of schools from all over the place that are very creative in the way that they explore the curriculum. So, and that's, they look to us and other organisations to help them unpack difficult ideas in a more creative and practical way, so we can support what they're doing in the classroom, because it's so hands-on. And actually you get a lot of children coming that in the classroom they feel under pressure, or they feel intimidated, or they feel like they're not doing as well compared to their peers, but then they come here and everybody's equal because nobody's seen these objects before, so everybody's asking questions and trying to work out what something is. Even the teachers aren't the experts. Everyone can be an expert when they get here because it's new to everybody. So it can enable some children to shine but don't otherwise get the chance in the classroom, because sometimes the ways you learn in school can be quite restricted. Whereas in museums we try and cover all the learning styles, so kinesthetic, visual, auditory, all of that we try and build in to our workshops, and there's a bit of something for everyone, so that hopefully all children will be able to access what we're doing in some way. I think because everything is always changing, so every holiday we'll have a new set of family activities to do, new workshops, new event days. That's always keeping you thinking, keeping you being creative. They keep changing the school curriculum, so we keep having to change what we're doing for that. And actually we make changes in the museum, so we have a new John Piper gallery, and that's enabled us to plan new workshops around that. That's something very exciting. We have a temporary exhibition programme, so every time a new exhibition comes in, we'll look at how we can support schools with that. So we've got Peter Rabbit at the moment, so we're doing storytelling workshops around that. And then we have all the other things that we do that is sort of non-core but is really important. So for Peter Rabbit, we've got Mr. McGregor's garden, and we work with local school children, and they grew vegetables for the garden, and we planted them here, and now we're looking after them, and then the vegetables, once they're grown, will go to a food bank. So that's the kind of project that we do. It's independent of the formal curriculum and the normal visits, but it's something really enriching for everyone, really, and helps us build that partnership with our local community. So those sorts of projects are actually another aspect of museum work that isn't necessarily as public, not everybody knows unless they're involved in the project, but is also really inspiring and keeps you motivated in what you're doing, because there's always something new to try.
So do you think museums are maybe a bit misrepresented in how they sort of have a relationship with schools? And
I think it can be. I think there's often been a museum service, so museums have, this is our menu of what you can do, and the schools can pick something and they go away, and that's kind of that's inevitable, because the school will only come on a one-off visit for a day, and then they go back to school and they do follow-up things. And so they might come for years and years and years in a row, but they're still just, you're there with you for one day. So what we try and do is build longer-term relationships with schools, to enable us to explore new things to do together, and also to enable us to see the impact of the work that we're doing. So we work with the Langley Academy in Slough on a long-term project over a year, sort of 15 months, with museum staff and school staff planning from scratch together new ways of working. So it wasn't the normal subjects that you might expect to take museum trips. And that was great for building much more longer term partnership and doing something very different that was still very relevant to the secondary schools. So more of that kind of work is exciting. It's just having the capacity to do that. And most schools just want the one-off visit because then they've planned it into their curriculum and they know what they're looking for from that day. But we will always tailor what we do to a school. So if they don't want something that we've got as our menu, then we will look at developing something more bespoke. I think get as much experience as you can, so volunteer. It's tough because not everyone can afford to volunteer. It's a bit of a luxury to have the time to do that. But when I'm recruiting someone and I look at their experience, if they've shown an initiative, even if they've just gone somewhere for a week to help out, and even as I say, we've had work experience students this week and we get a lot coming in. They've just used their initiative and gone out and really made the most of that opportunity. That will count for a lot, probably more than lots of qualifications. I mean, the qualifications are good because they show an understanding of a subject area or museums in general, but they're not the be all and end all. I think having taken the time to go and investigate somewhere or visit somewhere, or even if you haven't had a work opportunity, a volunteering opportunity, to show that you visited lots of museums, that you're excited about museums, and you're in education, that you're excited about working with people. So if you've got experience volunteering with young people, for example, even if it's not in a museum, that would count. Or if you wanted to work in education and you talked about how you've got a big family and you've taken them out to the zoo, everything can help if you look at the skills of the job and you can show that what you've done supports those skills, even if it's not in a museum context.
So do you think this is a kind of area where experience and showing that you have the skills is more important than qualifications?
I do. I mean, it's interesting because a lot of people go through and do a master's in museum studies or some kind of museum qualification, and that does give you a grounding in how museums work, and that is definitely an advantage. And in education, if someone has teaching experience, that is also an advantage. But I think how people come across an interview is really important, and for us in education, it's about engaging people, so having good communication skills, having a personable character. You can tell when someone walks in the door because you have to be enthusiastic and open and flexible and patient and all of those things, and those aren't necessarily things that you get by studying.
And so sort of young people who are kind of interested in the more creative aspects of the curriculum, the kind of stuff you do here, what sort of advice would you give to them if they ever wanted to go into that industry rather than choosing a traditional sort of subject?
I think having a degree is useful. So I don't know what I said about qualifications, but I think having a degree helps you to understand what you're really interested in. I wouldn't say what degree you have really matters, and it isn't essential. We have people who work, there are people who work in museums who haven't gone all the way through a degree, but so they may just go younger at a younger stage. But I think if you are interested in a museum or in a collection or in a particular angle that the museum has, then just help out, find out more about it. We have a youth squad that we have for teenagers, so we're working with them on projects, and we're also hoping in the longer term that they will be really important in planning all our activities for their age group and more, so that they feed into our strategic thinking, so that we're not just representing a particular type of audience, that we're having that input as well. So looking for those sorts of opportunities with museums, and if they don't exist, asking the museum if they can set one up or be involved. There's things like Takeover Day, which is where young people go into the world of work and take over. Kids in museums do that with museums, so there's an organisation that promotes museums working with young people. So we do that every year. We invite young people to come in and take over the museum. And there are some sort of longer term schemes, so there's been a whole programme called Skills for the Future, which is run by the Lottery Fund through museums, where young people can find out about museum skills and be trained up in different areas. So there's lots of ways to work with young people and for young people to get